G'day you bloody legends, my name's Amir and today we're going to be talking to you a bit about touch footy. We're going to be discussing the accessibility and suitability of this wonderful sport in comparison to another invasion sport. Load the spinner! Soccer, who knew? Not me. Ha ha. Now, without further ado, let's get to the questions.
Number 1. How accessible is touch to play as a recreational sporting activity?
Well, first thing, we're going to be talking to you about the accessibility of the sport, and by simply looking at the level of participation in each state on this lovely annual report. And easy as that, we can see that the biggest amount of participation occurs with 420,835 in New South Wales and 102,287 participants in Queensland, but only 13,880 participants in South Australia. Meaning that it's not played as much as other sports, for example soccer, but it doesn't mean that nobody plays this sport. There's actually lots of participants. All the participations of touch football in Australia add up to 601,299 people. Now in comparison, when we look at soccer, there are about 1,360,000 participants Australia-wide. So just from this we can see that there is a lot, and I mean a lot, of accessibility when it comes to soccer. And from this we can also see that touch football is indeed a minor sport, especially in South Australia. To add, touch football is a very suitable sport because it's non-contact and therefore does not put the player in any serious injury. Probably the maximum amount of injuries you're going to receive are only minor scratches and possible bruises. This sport is also very simple to play and can improve your health through running and develop hand-eye coordination with passes and receiving the ball and trying the ball and yeah. Therefore, it can be seen that there are not many personal barriers to this sport. But one major issue with the sport of soccer is that it's personally barriered, meaning that although the sport is good cardio, you would actually need to be very physically active and very skilled in order to actually be good at the sport or even play it at all. Now in other factors, South Australia doesn't play touch football very much, and this is probably because of many social, cultural and environmental obstacles. To evaluate, Queensland and New South Wales are really big on rugby, and they also play touch football, which is a thing like in competition. And rugby is basically a more contact version of touch footy. And with the many years of these events occurring, one of the biggest are
the state of origin competitions between Queensland and New South Wales.
The society in those states have adopted this sport into their culture. To add, touch football and rugby are not world renowned and are mostly based in New Zealand and Australia. So don't get your hopes up for playing in the Olympics, because it was actually removed from the Olympics in 1924 by the IOC. And the last point to make is that there are some environmental obstacles that come to play for this sport. An example, when playing touch football, you have to be playing on a grass-covered field to avoid injury. Oh, and you also have to mark lines in different sections of the field that make the try line, the mid-line, and etc. And in comparison again, soccer is a sport that's everywhere around the world, and it's woven itself in the smallest scales of society. Pretty much everywhere you go in the world, soccer is more than just a sport. It is a culture of its own. To add, there are not many social, cultural, and environmental obstacles faced when you want to play this for recreational purposes. I mean, all you need for this sport is just a ball, 2 trees, and it can also be played in environments including dirt, grass, desert, the mountains. Seriously, the mountains.
Number 2. How accessible and suitable is the sport of touch for supporting the goal of lifelong participation in physical activity of school graduates?
Now for this question, I went full Tracy Grimshaw. I actually asked the question from an NRL coordinator, because why not? Primary sources. He replied that touch football is an inclusive and lifelong participating sport and anyone can play it, not just school graduates. It is a non-contact sport which is played all year round, making it appealing to players of any age, gender, experience, and also supports the ability in groups through the Touch Football Specialized Program. And they support members from a very young age through to players competing over 70 years old. Additionally, this is also probably because the sport is very easy to get into. It is very simple to learn because all you need to learn is how to throw and catch the ball. In physiological terms, it's most likely going to be your average agile and aerobic capable person. But still, anyone can play this sport. But then when we compare, most people start soccer from a very young age and then they drop out around their 35 years of age. So obviously we can see that there is a trend, most likely because of the physical barriers people face when they want to get into the sport and when they drop out of the sport. Just because there is a ball getting kicked in the game, it still requires a little bit more than running. Training in passing, catching, like for goalkeepers, dribbling and shooting the ball is necessary. And this in itself is a personal and physiological barrier for people who want to get into the sport. In physiological terms, soccer players are usually very agile, aerobically capable, and have quick reflexes. Subscribe, like, comment. I said do it now.